Hey everybody, welcome back to Coffee and Croissant with me, Christian Alphonse. It's a podcast show about food and travel. Today I have a special guest, Daniel Calderone. Daniel Calderone is a filmmaker, entrepreneur, owner of 94 Productions, currently runs a podcast series, Corner Talks, where he talks about wellness filmmaking with him and his friends. Daniel, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for asking me to join this podcast. I want to say, I'm really proud of you, for starting this kind of new venture. It's quite exciting stuff. Looks to be promising, and happy to be on here.
Well, happy to have you. Me and Daniel, we go way back since 2017, and we'll definitely let the audience know how we met and how we stayed in touch. Today's show,
sure.
we're going to be focusing about Italy. Daniel is Italian. He has spent some time in Italy. We're going to be talking about the COVID-19 travel updates and how to get to Italy. We're going to also be talking about Italian culture, Italian food, and we're going to have our last segment about Italian pasta. If it's underhyped or overhyped, is it mid, if it slaps. So we're going to have a good and very fun and interesting show. So let's get the party started. So Daniel, let's tell the audience how we met. So
Yeah, for sure.
I'll tell my side of the story. I'm very curious to know your side of the story.
My side, me, I have an imagination, so my side might be a little bit exaggerated. We might have met in an underground alleyway.
But we actually met at work. We met in 2017. I was working at Entertainment One. I was in the TV production side, and Daniel was working in marketing. And we met in the lunchroom. At that time, E1 was having training video session, and Daniel asked if I could be part of his team. I gladly said yes. Yeah. And from there, our friendship grew. Around that time, Daniel was aspiring to become a filmmaker. So glad to see him being part of the most exciting part of the journey, if I'm being quite honest, where he's growing connections, building his brand. And he's making really good shorts. Currently, right now, his short's beautiful. Is winning all these awards. Each time I'm seeing him in IG, I'm seeing more and more awards.
Thank you.
So congrats, Daniel. And I think that's briefly the story how we met. We'll get a little bit more deeper in our stories together.
Yeah, for sure.
Daniel, did I miss anything?
No, you said it right there. When I first remember, when I first officially met you was you were on my floor. I was in the marketing department. You're in the accounting department, and you came walking around and kind of introduced yourself. And that's one of the qualities that struck me is your approach, and you're just not afraid to throw yourself in there into a room, right? Networking, which I should mention, that was the word. You've always advocated since day one, and it's something that I've always kind of cherished, right? Valued as a person, because it's got me to this point in my career. So I just remember what I'm trying to get at, because I've grown a lot since 2017, and I remember you just having the confidence to go into a floor you didn't even know the people and interact with them, and that's when I remember standing up saying, "Hey, what's going on?" Who are you? And you were like, "What's going on?" You're like, and then I remember you first saying I'm in film, I love movies, that's why I'm here. And it was kind of astonishing, I'll be honest. If I can mention this, I don't know if you had the same experience, but the company we worked at, not a lot of people were coming from film backgrounds or intensive film studies. So when you said no, I'm a former study of film, theater, I said to myself, wow, I have to know more about you. I want to be friends with you, right? And like you said, and make you join my project. That was a really fun time. I remember that we cast you and we did a little video. I want to throw that in there just to intersect. Do you remember how much I hustled on that video?
Oh, you hustled so much.
I did it in between work.
It was a company-wide thing just to help us more about training, and Daniel just put himself in there.
But I did it on my lunch break. I did it on a coffee break. I did it, and even my team was like, "Where did Daniel go?" And Christian's like, "Don't worry, he's gonna premiere it soon." It was worth it, buddy. It was worth it. You gotta do it. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. Definitely saw different parts of the building during this video.
Sure. Of course, yeah.
Perfect. So let's transition into COVID-19 travel updates. So we're both currently in Ontario. I don't know if you read the good news. Let me share my screen. But good news is that Doug Ford is gonna open it up. Duckford is
Yeah, I
gonna
heard.
open it up in March. Now specifically, this is from the Globe and Mail. He's specifically gonna release. He's gonna
Yeah,
list
I was gonna say
all,
March, right?
yeah, March of next year. So all the long
Wow.
term plans related to COVID-19 would be
Let me
released in
quickly ask
March.
you: you
Go
think
ahead.
that's possible, or you think it's gonna be okay by that time?
I
What
I
is your
think
thoughts?
uh I think he's very ambitious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at this point in time, we must reach herd
Herd
immunity because,
immunity, yeah.
yeah, because a
But
lot of
cases are
people,
keeping steady at like 2 to 300,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
and some job places, I don't know your opinion on that, but some jobs are like requiring people to be fully vaccinated, and that's
Oh
definitely
yeah.
going to help. I know this Monday, people are gonna be like my gym. I go to Fit for Less.
Right.
They sent me this amazing email. I was so excited about saying that like all the restrictions within the gym, because certain
Hmm.
parts of the machines were like completely closed off, would be
Hmm.
lifted. So there's no need to do physical distancing at the gym. You can easily move around, and that's gonna be the
Nice.
same thing for like arenas, restaurants.
Oh, is that the movie
Like,
theater? That's how it should be. And I was like, just to interject here, like
mhm,
from day one, I was telling you, like when they introduced the COVID vaccine, um, people could avoid it as much as they want, convince other people not to take it, but eventually they're going to implement it and make it mandatory. It's
mhm,
going to be part of our culture, like our lifestyle. Like I was at a restaurant and a movie yesterday.
mhm.
Both places asked for a certificate, and but as soon as you're in, everybody's roaming around doing their thing, whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, did you honestly think it wasn't going to get to that point? They were just being nice about it in the beginning. Like it's up to
Mhm.
you to get it, but there was no way they were going to let society function and say, oh, we have to shut down again because certificates aren't applicable here.
Yeah. But what are they gonna do? Like, they can't. The government cannot print more money. Like, let's just be honest.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
cannot
Yeah,
print
and
more
how many
money.
times? And I was on my story. I was on Serve, right? Because I was
Mhm.
running a business. I was self-employed, and I obviously couldn't get any work, so I
Yeah.
had to go on Serve. And what I'm trying to get at is you can only do that for so long. Like it takes a
Yep.
toll not only for your mental health but financial, right? Like how I can't live off of 24 grand a year. So
Oh no. Oh
maybe back
man.
in our grandparents' era, bro, I could have bought
Yeah.
a house by now.
Exactly. Oh
Right?
wow. That's such a true fact,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Grandparents, you could buy a house with a penny at this point. Back
Yeah.
those
Right.
days. But yeah, but I'm very excited about this. So,
Hmm.
hopefully in March, things will be somewhat back to normal. I'm very
Yep.
excited about it. And that's gonna be
100%.
good news for traveling. So I have a friend from Italy, and she's actually going to go to Italy sometime in November. And I think I don't know if you have family that's going to Italy,
I don't have
but
family going to Italy, but I have family there.
their family there, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm so curious to know how they're dealing with the whole pandemic, and I'll definitely ask that a
Yeah.
bit
They're.
later. But if you're
Yeah.
Canadian right now,
Hmm.
you can actually travel to Italy. So the COVID
Nice.
travel updates are a little bit weird all over the place. Daniel, do you know a bit about it? Um,
Not too much. I know. I don't know if they lifted the border control,
yeah, they're gonna
border
lift it.
block in the U.S. I don't know the exact details,
Oh,
but I know with the North American border.
I'll definitely tell you more about it right now.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. I'd
like
love to know. Yeah.
for the
Thank you.
U.S., they're gonna lift the border in November.
Hmm.
The biggest issue is that Canada has a very restricted regulation for COVID. One of the
Hmm.
biggest ones right now is that you need to be fully vaccinated. That's one of the things. But you
Hmm.
also need to have a negative COVID-19 test that
Right.
is that has been taken 72 hours before your trip. That's the
Wow.
most important part. So some places will allow you to enter the country without being fully vaccinated, but once you enter, you'll need to quarantine. And Italy is definitely one of the case. But let's say for the states, for instance, you don't need to be fully vaccinated. You just need to show that you have negative COVID-19 test.
Hmm.
Actually, you do need to be fully vaccinated for the states, but more on that a bit later. But it can't be rapid testing, and that's the issue. So you have to do the molecular test, and that's a bit more different than rapid testing. Molecular test is a swab, is a spitting, is when they do the swab up all the way up to your nose,
Hmm.
and it needs to be done 72 hours. The biggest issue with traveling now is coming back to Canada. and have some little
Yeah.
bit of horror stories from friends who went to Africa, coming back to Canada, had a really hard
Oh,
time
yeah.
because if you're positive, you're staying there for a while until you
Yeah,
get
for
a
sure,
negative
man.
testing.
Yeah. And that happened? Like they actually came back positive?
Oh, they got so I think from what he told me, he said like he probably got scammed.
Oh my
Where because
god.
like him within this whole group, because we were a group of friends, all of them were negative. It was only
Okay.
him that was positive, and that just couldn't make sense. So he went outside of his hotel and actually got the test from somewhere else, and he came
Mhm.
back negative. Because of that, he was finally able to get back to Canada. So
Right.
that's something people need to consider.
Well,
But
that's
in
why I don't. I just
go
want to
ahead.
say, like, that's why I don't. Me, I'm very cautious about traveling, and not for anything. Like at this point, I'm vaccinated, right? Like I
Yeah.
do intend to leave the country or go on vacation or whatever, right? But it's
Hmm.
not like this compulsion. Like a lot of people like have to go, and it's like you just described. Like, do I want to deal with that hassle
Oh.
coming back? And like, there's just way too many restrictions. Like I'm the kind of guy where it's like I like maybe I don't know if it'll get to that point. Maybe it's a fantasy,
Mm.
but getting to some level where it's not as intensive. Like there's
Mhm.
some herd immunity, some trust or policy in place where if you are vaccinated, you know what I mean. Um, there's that freedom to like just roam around, and because that whole like I'm thinking back to when Canada had those hotels that if you
Mhm.
traveled, you had to stay in a hotel,
Yeah.
right, regardless for like three
Mhm.
days or something. Like I don't know, I don't know how people do it, but again, everyone's different, right?
Yeah. Some people like risk. Some people like
Right?
to
People like
risk.
to take risks, bro. And you know what's funny is that my whole career has been a risk. So I should be the one to talk, right? Yeah.
That's, that's so funny. Well, you took a lot of chances and they're finally paying off, which is
Thanks,
really
buddy.
good.
Yeah, yeah. I just think
Very good to
that was
see.
ironic that like I'm conscientious about traveling, but meanwhile I'm just like, yeah, buddy, I'm gonna put all my money
Oh,
down on this dream.
oh, man.
I'm That's
Uh,
all good. But I love this. I love this. Yeah, I love that we're seeing some optimism in
oh
traveling. And
man.
like I said, I'm the kind of guy where as I see things, I think it all comes down to like where you want to travel to, and I think that's something that you'll discuss not only on this conversation but
Mm.
future conversation on the podcast, right?
Yeah,
Because when you want to go somewhere, man, you'll go. Like you'll
you'll
find a way.
go.
Like for
Yeah.
me, man, when I was turned 25 and I wanted to go to LA, San Diego, and San Francisco, I did like a West Coast trip.
Mm.
I made it happen. Like
Yeah.
I just went, you know.
Exactly. That's 100%.
Mhm.
And I found it very interesting because I don't know if you can read this right here on the screen, but
For sure, yeah.
you don't really need like a COVID vaccination certificate to
That is
enter
very interesting.
Italy,
Wow,
but
insane.
you do need to quarantine for at least 14 days. That's what they said.
Hmm.
But it's the only issue for Canadians is the coming back part. That's the biggest issue
Yep.
because you need to be fully vaccinated. That's one of the most requirements. Also, have a negative COVID test. If you're not fully vaccinated, there's a lot more stuff that needs to be done, of course. But I'm always saying, be fully vaccinated would be a lot easier to come in and out of the country. Just as long as you have the extra income to pay for those negative COVID tests. Like those COVID tests, hopefully they're negative because you can't pay for negative COVID
Yeah.
tests.
Yeah. Yeah. For
And be
sure.
careful with your words here.
Hey, they're already doing fake certificates, so I don't know if you're
Oh man, in
going through that
states,
same problem. Yeah.
it's
No,
crazy
even
right
here,
now.
bro. Here in
Really?
Ontario, man. Yeah, I was at a
Oh
restaurant the other
wow!
day.
Tell me
I was at
more
the restaurant.
about
I was at a
this.
restaurant. I was at a restaurant the other day last week with a friend, and then we're like waitresses just making small talk while we're paying the bill,
Mhm.
and she goes, I'm like, we're like, how you finding things, right? Like at work or managing clients and things like that, patrons. And she's like, yeah, she's like, people are giving us such a hard time with these vaccine certificates, and half of them are fake. I'm like, what are you talking
Oh
about? Yeah,
Lord.
like it's a PDF form. You know those
Oh.
fill-in forms, those
Yeah,
fill-in
yeah, yeah,
forms.
yeah,
They
yeah.
do that. Apparently, there's something floating
Oh
around,
man.
and I'm just like, wow. That's why the QR code is getting implemented.
Man. Well, I'm very excited for that QR code. I know they installed it for restaurateurs to do it.
I already got it set up.
You
No
already
one
got it set up?
scans it though. Yeah, but no one scans it. From my experience, they just look at it.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I'll ask you more about that right now. So like it's
sure.
the app, right? It's a Verify app on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, whatever, right?
Yeah, I
And it
believe so.
goes by
I didn't.
tranches. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I should full disclosure. I didn't really set it up myself because I've been busy with work, so it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a family thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we had an agent take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, yeah, I'm not sure how it works exactly. All I know is that a QR code pops up, gives you your date
Mm-hmm.
of birth, your name, and then that's what they're going to be making mandatory. The
Oh,
the
that's good.
certificate was temporary, but I know the QR code is going to be legit because
Oh,
I don't know
that's
if
good.
you can't fraud.
Oh, you can fraud it, man. I'm sure
Yeah,
someone.
you can fraud everything, right? Well, you're a coder, so what am I saying, right?
Yeah, man. You can fraud anything, man. Like people don't
Listen, I'm the
care.
wrong guy to talk to, guys. Right?
But looks like right now, like in terms going back to our discussion about Italy, the most important part of talking about Italy is to have like a self declaration, and it's like a special organization that allows you to enter the country without issues at the airport. It's mandatory requirement for any nation, including visa-issued countries like Canada. So we all know that COVID-19 is a bit contagious and there's a bunch of variants going on. And that's what Italy is doing to make sure that people are self-declaring themselves. But one, I don't want to say like one good side about this, even though there's like the slight good side about this is that there's no tourists. From I'm hearing that people who are going to Europe, they can just do whatever they want to do. There's no tourists around. They can go to the Louvre, they can go to the Tour Eiffel without any issues. So that's only the good side of it. So if you're willing to take the risk to go travel in Europe, well, the only good side is that there's no tourists there. So I don't know. I don't know who else would do it, but I know some people are dying to leave their house. Like they're
Uh,
dying to go and explore. So go ahead
Look, I
at
do
your
want to
own risk.
mention
Go
I
ahead.
do want to mention that with Italy, like it's kind of concerning because I don't know how they're doing with their economy, but I do
Mhm.
remember last time I went to Italy, one of the tour guides said that Italy's economy is based off of luxury and tourism.
Yeah.
So luxury, yeah, they still have. Luckily for them, like you can't touch that. But with tourism, it is questionable. Like I don't know how many people are going. But then again, man, like not because I'm from Italy, and I'm sure
Mm.
we'll get more into why Italy is a fascinating, beautiful country. But there's something about that. Like everybody's gonna go back. Like no
Hmm.
one's gonna say like have hesitations, right? If they're going back to the states full force and they're the snowbirds and all that, people
Hmm.
are gonna go back to Italy, right? Especially
Okay.
our generation, like that haven't experienced it yet. They're not gonna avoid that country, right? So
Yeah.
they'll get it
But
back.
um.
But let me just say that again: tourism and luxury. This isn't lumber, all right, Christian? Like Canada. This is tourism and luxury. And when they said
uh.
luxury, I'm like, what do you mean? They're like Prada, Bentley.
Mhm.
They're like Lamborghini, Ferrari. I'm like,
Versace. Yeah.
wow, that's when you know that's a flex. Like they're that they make so much money off of that alone.
Hmm.
That's what their economy's backed on. You know,
I mean, well, that's so interesting for you to say. I didn't know tourism was such a big part of the economy. You
huge,
previously,
huge.
I didn't know. You briefly mentioned that you have family in Italy. How are they
Hmm.
doing with the whole pandemic?
Yeah, they're doing quite well. It's a different lifestyle over there. Like as soon
Hmm.
as I think the first or second wave ended for them, I
Hmm.
think even the first, to be honest with you, from what I've seen like on their Instagrams and how we communicate, like they've been out, and not just in Italy, like they just travel throughout Europe.
Hmm.
But that's what I mean by like the mentality is a bit different. Like the Americans have that liberal kind of
Hmm.
mentality, like everyone's independent, do your own thing,
Hmm.
but they got more of like a free spirited mentality. Like you only
Okay.
live once, right? The beauty in life is through enjoying it, right? Like it's not like over here where we were locked down for 3, 4 times, or you know what I mean, like staying in our houses. So what I'm trying to get at is, yeah, they took it hard in the beginning. It was very, very scary.
Hmm.
What was going on when the cases were rising up, and Italy was like the top 5 countries to be hit.
Hmm.
But now I think they've kind of adjusted, they've adapted. Everyone's vaccinated for the most part, or at least I know, like the cousins.
Hmm.
So yeah, they're living life, man. They're doing their thing like nothing happened. No one's really talking about anything before. Before, I have to say though, it was scary because every country's different, right?
Yeah.
Luckily for us, like we don't realize it as Canadians that we have the liberties, like privileges, where even though we were in lockdown, we could still walk around and do our thing. But in Italy, right, it was getting so bad that there was actually police in the streets that would ask you for some sort of like documentation to prove that
Really?
to prove that you're given permission to roam around, or you have some purpose as to why you're leaving your house. Yeah, and this is like the early days though, not anymore. But this was like really, that's what my cousin told me. I don't know if it was like the big cities, but for the small towns, yeah, there was definitely
Oh
some
man. Did,
authoritative control. Yeah.
I did hear like so. What I heard about Italy is that they were having a hard time with the pandemic,
Hmm.
especially because it has an older population in
Hmm.
Italy compared to the younger population.
They do, yeah,
Yeah, and I also heard about Venice. I remember Venice was having issues with water, and they were a bit under the water for a bit.
yep,
But yeah,
yeah.
what?
The
Go
city
ahead.
might. No, I was just gonna say it was Venice.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to experience it in my life.
Hmm.
But I don't know if it's gonna be around by the end of the century. They said, like, not that we'll be alive, but
Wow,
something to the effect that it's sinking. Yeah,
man.
every year.
Hey, I gotta ask: is Venice that? Is it that beautiful? Is it that
It's
gorgeous?
beautiful. Yeah, I'll tell you what mesmerizes people about Venice is the fact that it's completely immersive, but it's like a frozen in time, you know, place.
Hmm.
So what that means is when you're roaming around the streets, when you're looking at the buildings, the architectures, it's like you're dropped in the middle of the 1500s, like the Renaissance period. And yes, you could argue there's so many places in Italy, like Rome and Florence, that give you that effect, and they do. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but Venice, like, there's nothing that's modern. Like, everything is stuck in that time period. Nothing was improved upon. Nothing was renovated. Because Rome and all these places, right? You'll have like shops like Prada, like you'll just see like Prada and
Hmm.
things like that. And Venice did have shops. Don't get me wrong, but they're in the buildings of these Renaissance uh, type buildings, right? So it was really luxurious. Yeah. Is this Venice? Yeah.
This is
It's
Venice.
also
Yeah.
fascinating. It's also fascinating how to like move around. Like, it's all on boats and gondolas, and it's otherworldly. I think that's what strikes people about it.
Have you done the gondola?
Yeah, yeah. I did it
Man.
because I said, when who knows when I'll come back, right? So I said, let me just experience it. But see those taxis, see the one in the foreground?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's how you enter the city. And those things.
No. Oh no way.
Yeah, it's like a
Oh
speedboat, and it's exactly like it's taken right out of a movie. I can see why Hollywood films here a lot, like The Italian Job and James Bond. Very cinematic, very picturesque.
man. And so I'm not. So I don't know if you knew this about me. You knew this about me. I actually took Italian first and second year
Okay,
of my
didn't know
study.
this at all. This guy wants to be
Man,
trilingual. I love
yeah, man.
it.
I definitely took some Rosetta Stones, man.
Yeah,
I think
same here.
Italian culture is something I really did enjoy a lot. I still enjoy now.
Hmm.
But man, Italy was one of the places I always wanted to visit.
Hmm.
And
You did visit it, right? You went
no, no, I didn't
graduation
visit
trip.
it, man.
Oh,
I,
what?
I was trying to visit it so hard, but I just couldn't fit it. I
You
couldn't
got
fit it,
stuck
and I
in
was like,
Croatia.
I don't even Croatia, man. It's just so because Italy in Europe is a little bit out of your way, especially if you're in France. You're like,
It
oh,
is, yeah.
it's so out of your way. Because I wanted to go to France and also Portugal, but I just couldn't fit Italy. And I was like, I could always go another time. And this is a perfect lesson for everyone. If you want to go somewhere, go now, because you never know if you're gonna have time to go in the future. But yeah, Venice is definitely a place I wanted to go. Um, and good to know that it is picturesque. Hopefully, it's not underwater. So I can actually visit these gondolas and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So when was the last time you were in
I know
Italy?
they maintaining it. Just want to mention that.
Internet, yeah.
Yeah, so that, it's not with technology and things like that. Like, they're not going to let it happen. It's like Niagara Falls, right? Not that anyone maybe cares about that, but for people who haven't seen it yet or are not born yet, the erosion, right? It's receding backwards. It's like a centimeter every year or something, or an inch.
Hmm.
So eventually, they predict it'll be so far back that you can't even have, you don't even have, wouldn't even have a proper vantage point to enjoy it, right? Its beauty,
Oh.
taking its beauty. So what I'm trying to get at is, apparently they're going to shut it down. I don't know if they're doing this already, but they're going to stop the water flow,
Hmm.
seal it up with like metal and cement, things like that, to prevent future erosion. Because it makes
Wow.
sense, right? All that
Yeah.
water, like, repeating,
Yeah.
um, repeatedly, like, exerting pressure. It's
Hmm.
going to be like the Grand Canyon, right? So they're taking care of that, and they'll do the same thing with Venice, 100%.
Man, that's actually gonna be a big cost of infrastructure. I'm curious to know how the Italian government is
It's
gonna
gonna be your
budget for that.
taxes. It's
Yo,
gonna be your taxes.
tourism
Oh,
taxes, luxury
Niagara or
taxes.
Venice? Yeah, no, no, Venice. Yeah, Venice. I don't know if the Italians were willing to pay that tax.
Man,
Might be some mafia money. They might have to fly down to Sicily.
uh, Oh yeah, as you can see right now, this is the map of Italy, and as I was saying, this is France right here, and I was somewhere over there in Paris. But yeah, just to make your trip all the way
Isn't there
to
a
like
train? Don't they have like sophisticated trains that
it's
run?
they do. It's just like it would it just would have been such like a hard way for me to do my trip.
Yeah,
So I was like, oh man, I
it
just
was
rather
out of the
take
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
just out of the
yeah.
way for
I
me
got you,
at
man.
the point of time.
Yeah.
But you were definitely in Italy like a couple years ago, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
Um, one place I always want to visit in Italy, I always want to visit Florence. I heard Florence has like one of the best like food and culture over there.
Oh yeah,
Have
the
you?
pizza's amazing, and the steak,
Yeah.
the Florentine. Yeah, they have
Oh,
these huge ass steaks, the size of your head.
no
You know what I
way.
mean? Yeah, like it's just they're known for that. I was recommended to have it when I was went there.
Okay. So like
Yeah,
so you did have it? You did have it.
yeah. No, I did have it when I'm saying when before going there because I
Hmm.
did. So I'll give you actually on this map like exactly
Hmm.
like my trip. So I went from Venice to Florence,
Okay.
and then I went to Rome, and then I
Wow.
went to a place called Terracina, which is just outside of Rome.
Hmm.
Um, and then I went to Pompeii. I don't know if it's around there. I think it's in Lazio.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an hour out of Rome.
Hmm.
And then I went to Naples.
Okay.
Briefly stayed there. Um, oh no, sorry, the Amalfi Coast, which is I think in between Rome and Naples. The
Okay.
Amalfi Coast, so Sorrento, Capri. Um, and then yeah, sorry, then I went to Naples, and then from Naples I went to Palermo because that's where my dad's from.
Wow.
Yeah, and we did that
Man.
in 3 weeks, so it was quite a trip. I wouldn't do it again, be only because you're just always on the go, right? You don't really have
Hmm.
time to absorb everything. But I would go back to the Amalfi Coast, Capri. That's where a
Amalfi.
lot of celebrities I should mention. The Americans love that place. A lot of
Yeah.
rich people too. Yeah, yeah. Rome
Amalfi
wasn't too
Coast.
bad. Rome was like a cross between. It's become so commercialized,
Hmm.
but there are some places in Rome where it's like mind blowing. Like the Colosseum,
Hmm.
there are places, you know how like you see something like a picture or something in movies and you're like, wow, like it's so grand, it's epic, it's impressive. But in
Hmm.
real life, you'll see it and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Like I'll get like the Mona Lisa, right? Mona Lisa's
Yes.
everywhere, but when you finally see it, it's like, oh my god, it's just a little like,
It's so
yeah,
small.
a
Yeah.
little portrait, like school photo portrait, right? But the
Uh.
Colosseum
Yeah.
lived up to the hype. Yeah.
Lives up to the hype. Okay. So.
Well, because hold on, I just want to mention this. The reason why is because it's not just a building. Like think about it, we have grand buildings in Toronto, right?
Mhm.
Ottawa, New York, whatever, North America, the Western world. But I just as a human, like I can't conceptualize, I can't wrap my head around this. But this was built 2,000 years ago
Mhm.
at a time with primitive technology, primitive tools and resources, and the fact that it towers over you and it's just
Mhm.
a massive structure.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just history on display. So I wanted to mention that because I even have a photo with it. Um, and I'm like I'm mesmerized by Roman history, like ancient Roman history, and I think it's so epic and grand in scale.
Okay.
Again, cinematic.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were interested in Rome history like that. Wow.
Yeah, well, even my films, like I intend to make one or two like based in Roman history. Very fascinated with like the emperors.
And like the politics
Um,
behind it as well, or.
yeah, but it was exact the politics behind it. I think more so like I'm fascinated with stories like Caligula, even though he was a
Mhm.
crazy guy. I think I'm more fascinated with him because he became emperor at like 23,
Mhm.
and I kind of say to myself like 23 years old, what was I doing at 23? And he was responsible for like the biggest empire at the time.
Yeah.
It's almost like a 23-year-old getting voted into office as president for the U.S.
Mhm.
Right, and it's like you
Yeah.
just can't wrap your head around it, and the fact that all these the liberties that he had, just the tyranny that he kind of exuded like onto people. It's just a fascinating. I think it's a very complex character to kind of like tackle and investigate. So I don't know, like those kinds of stories I find very fascinating. A lot of the emperor stories, like the first emperor Augustus, and really cool, really cool. everything in history you have to understand is romanticized to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Like we look back and say, oh wow, like they were like conquerors, and
Oh
you know
man.
they saw what they want, they did what they want, but
Yeah.
it was a different time for sure, right?
Then that's such a good point. History is so romanticized. One thing I was very fascinated about early on this year was Genghis Khan.
Yeah,
Um, oh my God, like the Hawaii's emperors, like how wide he operated his land was just crazy to me. And
yeah,
like,
biggest
and all
empire in history technically.
because yeah, and he
Yeah,
like
geographically, yeah.
he like massacred a bunch of people, like destroyed a bunch of culture. But we know him as this guy that brought like the melon system,
Right?
like
Yeah, I know. And it's
we know the
amazing
good things
how
about it, but like that guy was
it was
horrific.
a way of yeah, it was a way of you make such a good point. Like a lot of these tyrannical like
Yeah.
historical characters, you forget that they were responsible for a lot of horrible horrendous acts, right? But at the same time, you know, we look back at them with reverence, with what they introduced to the world and the technologies, and we also accept as a society that was how it was back then, right? Like
Yeah.
nowadays, everything strikes us as, oh my God, you said this and said that. And I want to just mention this, that Bill Maher said something very interesting, something
Mm,
thought that very thought provoking. Um, he said, you know, our generation, you know, we're so caught up in cancel culture, and we believe we're so self-righteous that we wouldn't do it that way, we wouldn't say it that way, and everything in the past should be, you know, changed, right? Should be
mm,
looked at differently. And if it can't, we need to remove it from our minds. But he made a good point. He's like, what you don't realize is that as you as generations pass, they're gonna look back on your generation and say you did things wrong as well. Because
mhm,
that's the whole essence of being human, is that you make mistakes but you learn from them. And
mhm,
the important thing is that you progress as a species.
mhm.
So it's kind of like whatever we do in these next 100 years, you're telling me in 400 years they're going to look back and say, oh, they knew they were the prime, they were the like the top generation. No, they're going to look back and say, why was everyone staring at their phones? Why was everyone trying to get a date on Tinder and not looking someone in the eye and trying to talk to
Yeah.
them? You know what I mean? Like they're going to pick apart whatever we pick apart before us, because it's
Mhm.
easy to look back and pick apart. How many things do you pick apart about your life,
Yeah.
or I do my life in the past, right?
Mhm,
That was just a side note I want to mention, because we're on the subject of history,
mhm.
is that we shouldn't, you know, condemn the people of the past. We should try to learn from it and move forward with
Yeah.
grace. Yeah.
Hey, Dan, like that's a side of you I didn't know about, man. Well, I'm so
Yeah,
cool
man.
that me and audience learning about this side of you for the very first time. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of today's show. Part 2 will be posted shortly. If you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends and family. Subscribe to the channel as well. See you next time.